Hey, special educators. Welcome to Teach, Taskbox, Inspire, the podcast dedicated to making your job as a special education teacher easier by making your instruction more fun for you and your students. Inside each episode, you'll learn how to get the most use out of your task boxes in the classroom. I'm your host, Lisa Holiday from Chalkboard Superhero, a veteran special education teacher passionate about empowering you with purposeful teaching strategies, helpful tips and tricks, and other classroom management tools that will help you thrive in your role. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hey there, special educators, and welcome back to another episode of Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I'm your host, Lisa Holiday, and today's episode is going to hit home for a lot of you because we're talking about one of the hardest places to be a teacher. That moment when nothing seems to work. When you've tried the visual, the reinforcement, the token board, the choices, a break card, a sensory strategy, the prompting, the planned ignoring, and the behavior is still happening. Or maybe it's even getting worse. Or maybe it's changing on you out of nowhere. You feel defeated, stuck, or just freaking exhausted. And you're not alone. This episode is your roadmap for what to do next. You guys, I have talked to so many teachers who have said, girl, I've tried everything. Nothing works. If that's you, this episode's for you. All right, let's kind of start with the truth. Strategies don't fail. Alignment fails. And that's it. That's the whole thing. Kids don't just wake up and say, you know what? I'm going to overpower a token board today. They don't break reinforcers. They don't stop responding to visuals. Most behaviors plans fail because one of three major reasons. So let's kind of break those down. Number one, you picked the wrong function. This is the biggest. If the strategy does not match the reason behind the behavior, it will never work. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, please go back to another episode that I have that talks about how you can figure out the function of the behavior. Because if you don't know how to do that, you need to do that first. So it's kind of like giving Tylenol for a broken arm. Wrong remedy. You need to ask yourself, is this behavior about escape, attention, control, sensory, avoidance of demand, overwhelm, anxiety, fatigue, something happening in the environment? You can reward and reinforce all day long, but if you're rewarding something that doesn't match the function, the behavior will not change. Number two, the wrong reinforcer. This is so common. Teachers think they're reinforcing. They're like, I gave him a Jolly Rancher, but the student doesn't care, right? Reinforcement is only a reinforcement if it increases the behavior. A sticker isn't reinforcement if the kid freaking hates stickers. A break card isn't reinforcement if the kid is anxious and wants structure. A fidget isn't reinforcement if the kid just wants connection, right? Sometimes the reinforcer is outdated. You need to do a new reinforcement survey. Sometimes the reinforcement is too far away in time. Like maybe it's next week. No, it needs to be immediate. Sometimes the reinforcer isn't meaningful at the right movement, right? Behavior changes when the reinforcement matches the need and the motivation. So if you're already saying, okay, Lisa, you are correct. I didn't know the function and I was using the wrong reinforcer. You need to go back to the drawing board and try. But I have one more reason. Too much prompting or inconsistent implementation. And I will say inconsistent implementation is often happening because people aren't trained to do it, right? And this one hurts because it involves us as adults, right? Like it's our fault. Sometimes there's so much prompting that the student never learns the skill. Sometimes everyone is prompting differently. This paraprofessional gives 20 reminders. This teacher gives 1. This teacher over here gives 0. Sometimes expectations change depending on the adult. So maybe Miss Smith over there lets people walk around the classroom, allows them to get their stuff whenever they want. And then the next teacher, they need to raise their hand. So the expectations are different. Sometimes this strategy only gets used when things get bad, which is awful. When adults are inconsistent, kids get inconsistent results. So it's not going to work. And none of this makes you a bad teacher. Please don't feel bad about this. It just makes you a human teacher, right? But awareness is the first step. And you might be like, okay, I really have to take a step back and look at what I've been doing. So what does misalignment actually look like? So maybe the reinforcement doesn't match the why. Maybe you're offering stickers for on-task behavior, but the function is escape. So the kid keeps trying to avoid the task. So that doesn't really match, right? Maybe you're rewarding calm behavior after the escalation. So this is a classic accidental reinforcement. Like, are you okay? What's wrong? That's attention, right? You're going to have behavior go skyrocketing because they're like, yes, I wanted attention. They're getting it. Maybe the prompting is nonstop. If a student gets prompted 15 times before doing something, the behavior is not theirs. It's ours. Maybe the student is overwhelmed by the task itself, right? Sometimes it's not the behavior, it's a skill deficit. Maybe the strategy worked until it didn't. This usually means the skill didn't get generalized or the student didn't internalize the routine yet. Maybe the adults are just really burnt out and the follow-through is slipping. And it's not on purpose. They're not doing this maliciously. It's just humans trying their best, right? The key is to kind of like recognize that and kind of do some adjusting. Let's talk about why consistency beats perfection every time. Teachers constantly tell me, I'm trying, but I'm not perfect. And my answer is always, I don't need perfection. You don't need perfection. You need, and so does the kid, consistency. The best behavior plans on earth will fail with inconsistent implementation. Average plans succeed with predictable, steady routines. A student doesn't need you to be perfect. They need you to be predictable and calm and clear and repetitive, steady and compassionate. Behavior change is a marathon, not a sprint. Although that's what we want it to be. We want this behavior to change tomorrow, but it's not. Micro progress is still progress. So let's talk about my go-to reset process. This is what I use anytime a student behaves or kind of like takes a sharp turn or when all of a sudden nothing seems to work. I'm going to walk through it step by step. Number 1, clear the noise. Stop all the extras, stop all the charts, stop the elaborate plans, stop the complicated routines. You can't fix a leaking pipe while the water is still rushing out. Reset begins with simplifying. Number 2, rebuild safety and trust. Many behaviors spikes come from stress and shame or anxiety, overwhelm, or a rupture in relationship. This doesn't require, a heart-to-heart. It requires consistent presence and predictable actions. Sit beside them. Greet them at the door. Keep your tone regulated when you talk to that student. Use visuals. Honor their signals. Reach out and talk about your day or talk about things that relate to them. Play a game with them. Try to repair relationship that's damaged. Number 3, lower the demands just temporarily. This is not forever, guys. You're not enabling them, but lowering the cognitive load allows the child to regain regulation back. So what does lowering demands look like? It might be fewer tasks. It might be smaller tasks, shorter tasks. You might offer more support or more processing time or even more breaks. Regulated kids learn. Dysregulated kids just survive. Number 4, return to the basics. Go back to a first then chart, timers, break cards, shorter directions, clear boundaries, predictable transitions. The basics are powerful when you go back to them with intention. Number 5, reteach routines slowly. If a behavior spike lasted weeks, the student lost the routine. They need reteaching like it's September all over again. Explicit, modeled. Maybe you videotape it. They watch it. You want to practice it over and over and over. Number 6, reinforce anything positive. Micro wins build momentum. Eye contact, reinforce it. Coming to the table, reinforce it. Trying one word, reinforce. Getting a pencil, reinforce. Tiny successes create a ripple effect. You have no idea. I also use this with adults and they love it. I want you to also reset the staff mindset. A behavior reset does not work unless all the adults reset too. A lot of times when this happens, I've seen adults who just hate a student. They're like, I can't stand so-and-so. That needs to change, right? We need a reset too. And this is the part that nobody talks about. Teachers and paraprofessionals need emotional regulation as much as the kids do. All right, let's talk about rebuilding momentum with freaking exhausted staff. Let's talk about the adults, right? Because when behaviors spike, staff morale plummets. So here's how I want you to rebuild it. Number 1, always, always, always validate their experience. So you're going to say things like, I know this is hard. This is exhausting. You're doing your best. Do not skip this step. Number 2, reset expectations. All right, guys, we're going to go back to the basic for the next 2 weeks. Here's the goals. Here's the routines. That's it. Number 3, divide and conquer. Give every adult one job. Not 5, not 12, 1. Here's some examples. All right, you're the break card support. You're the calm voice. You're the data collector. And if you don't have a whole team, you kind of have to manage that on your own. All right, step 4, celebrate small wins as a team. You have to point out the progress or people will miss it. Did you see how quickly he sat today? He didn't yell in transition. She only needed one prompt. These micro wins kind of feed that adult confidence, so the consistency will stay. Consistency drives behavior change. And you have to give them a why. This is the last step. Kids don't learn when they're overwhelmed. We're helping them feel safe again, right? Teams don't follow plans. They follow meaning. So if you're listening today and you feel like nothing is working, please hear this. You're not failing. Your student is not failing. The strategy is not failing. It's just the alignment needs to be reworked. Sometimes the most powerful step is adding something new, but resetting back to what truly matters. Start small. Get consistent. Reteach. Rebuild trust. Claim those micro wins. You can do this. And you're not alone. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I hope you've gained some tips and motivation to fuel your week ahead. If you're ready to explore more strategies for empowering your students as independent learners, be sure to dive into my free training at chalkboardsuperhero.com/training. And don't keep all this knowledge to yourself. Share this episode with your special education teacher friends who could use some motivation and inspiration. One more thing before you go. If you're finding this podcast helpful and want to show support, head to Apple Podcasts and leave your rating and review. Until next time, keep teaching, taskboxing, and inspiring.